Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf Yomi. CHULLIN Daf Kuf Yud Aleph. We begin on Kuf Yud Amud Beis, 8 lines from the top of the Amud. Okay, so we spoke about roasting the udder. Now we move on to the liver. A different topic, which has some resemblance because it also has some problematic content. It has that blood, right, inside, which will be purged by way of salting or roasting. Now what happens if you just cook that liver? So let's see. Amrle Abaye, he turned l'Rav Safra. Do me a favor, Kisalkas Lahasa, when you travel up to Eretz Yisrael, ask around, how they conduct themselves. Boy Minai, ask them, Kabda, regarding roasting, cooking a liver. Okay, regarding the liver. Ma'atun Bey, what's your position on that? May a person cook a raw liver in a pot? Now, what could be the problem? You see, when you roast it, it's fairly simple. The blood just trickles out, burns up, and, evaporates. So it's gone. But when you cook it, Rashi explains, there's going to be a two-way transfer. The blood will leave, will come back in, right? There's an exchange of liquid in and out, in and out. And Rashi points out, even though the liver is kuloi dam, it's fully dam. We had this yesterday, right? Yalsa, the wife of Rav Nachman, pointed this out to us, that the kaveh, the liver, is a kosher version of blood, right, in effect. So, yeah, but that's when you eat it intact. But when the blood comes out, so the blood gets released through the cooking process and then comes back in throughout this same cooking process. Perhaps that's a problem. That was his question. Please find out. Ma'atun Bey, what's your position on that? Kisolek, so when he arrived up in Eretz Yisrael, Ashkeche, who did he meet up with? The Rav Zrika. And he posed him this question. And he responded with personal experiences. I'll tell you. Amar Leis, Rav Zrika says, sure, no problem. I personally cooked it up for Rabbi Ami and he ate it, no problem. There's your answer. Okay, so when he came back to Bavli, Rav Safra did, right? He came back to Abaye to relate this information. When he came back to Abaye, Amar Leis, Abaye says, no, that wasn't my... That's, of course, it's a Mishnah that, once as long as the liver is, during its cooking process, there's no absorption. It's so busy releasing and purging and sending it out. It's like a one-way channel. It goes only out, doesn't come back in. Amar he says like this. Lemesar nafsha, regarding forbidding the actual liver itself, loim kami boile. I never had this question. Of course it's okay. Rashi says the true dahilaflit. It's so busy expelling and purging and sending blood out. Lahoitzi kol shah loibol. It's not going to do any absorption. There's no question that it's okay. My question is only with respect to an accompanying piece of meat. So you have another piece of meat next to it, cooking alongside the liver. What happens there? Perhaps you can say that it's a problem because the blood coming out of the liver gets absorbed in the other basar. Because the other piece of meat isn't as eager, so to speak, to send out. It doesn't have the same rate of blood release as the liver does. The liver is just saturated with blood and it's just oozing out. The other piece of meat is sort of not as active. Let's call it not as active as the liver. So perhaps it does absorb some of that blood, and will be usher. And certainly, if that other piece of meat had been cleansed of its blood, certainly would pose an issue. Okay, that's the shaila. Okay, so that's one side of the equation. Now, why would you say it's okay? I mean, what's the other side of the equation? Rashi later explains because the blood of this liver is really permitted material. You see, you can eat the liver as is, right? Just roast it, and whatever comes out, comes out. Whatever stays in, stays in. You can eat it. So perhaps it's considered permitted substance, permitted blood, in which case, even if it comes out and transfers over to the other piece of meat, it's permitted blood, it's mutter. That was the shayla, okay? To forbid its colleague, the piece of meat alongside it. So if Safra asks Abaye, I mean, they're both contained in the same Mishnah, both halachas, both parts of this question are already discussed in the Mishnah. And apparently you know the first part from that Mishnah, so you would know the second part too. Meaning, the Mishnah clearly articulates that the liver itself that's being cooked does not become asa because it's busy oozing out, it's not going to absorb. That same Mishnah says that a piece of meat being cooked alongside this liver will absorb forbidden blood and is asa. Why is it that with respect to the question, the liver itself becomes asa due to the absorption of its own blood that left and came back in? He had no question about that. It certainly is okay, this not because of the Mishnah. Mishnah Maseches Trumos. Mishnah says when you cook a liver alongside another piece of meat, the other piece of meat becomes asa, but the liver itself is not affected by this process. So then, in the same Mishnah, you have the other part of the question too. With respect to forbidding the other piece of meat, you shouldn't either be questioning, because that's also discussed in that Mishnah. The same Mishnah discusses both parts. Hakaved, a liver that's cooking in a pot, it only forbids the next piece, but does not in itself become asur. Why? It's so eager, it's so busy, so preoccupied with expelling. The person's so busy talking, you can't listen, right? It's so busy oozing out. It's not open to it's not open to absorption. So it in itself is immune to absorption, and the next piece is asur. It's a clear Mishnah. Armalesi says, no. That Mishnah wouldn't really provide me with clarity regarding the next piece. You know why? Dilma Hasam Bekavda Disur. Perhaps that Mishnah is talking not about regular, ordinary kosher pieces of liver, where the Isser would only be limited to the blood aspect. It's a kosher liver, it's just a blood issue. That's not what the Mishnah is talking about. Bekavda Disur is speaking about a piece of liver which is off a unkosher animal. So it has all kinds of problems. Aside from its blood issue, it's from a treifa animal. And the issue perhaps is unrelated to the blood. Perhaps the blood would be okay, even if it transfers to the next piece of meat, perhaps. Turn to the next page. What happened is there was a transfer, shamnunis, of fattiness, of grease, of flavor, from this piece of liver which was forbidden, aside from its blood content. It was forbidden per se. So that's the issue. But back to our question, suppose the issue is limited to just the blood aspect. It's a kosher piece of liver. And the issue is merely a transfer of the blood from the liver to the next piece. That's the question. Okay, Ke'adar Salak. So then when Rav Safra came back again, traveled up again, this time he's going to try to achieve clarity on this. Ke'adar Salak, Ashke, who did he meet up with? The same person, Rav Zrika. And he says, let me clarify what I had in mind, what the question was. I understand. The liver itself remains unaffected. There's no absorption going on. What about the next piece of meat? Amalisa says, I got an answer for you too. On that too. This too should not be posed as a question. I have a clear answer. A personal story. Dano, myself, Yanai, that was his name, Yanai, Berei, who was the son of Rabbi Ami. Where did they end up? Iklan, Lebei, they ended up in the house of Yehuda Breid of Shimon Pasi. Okay, Iklan, we ended up in this house. V'karivalon, what they serve us for dinner? Karnya, the trachea. And what's connected to the trachea? You have the whole package. You have the bekufe, its whole package. It's got the lungs, it has the heart, the liver. And they served it as one piece. V'chalnu, we ate it, despite the fact that it was all cooked together. Apparently the liver will not infect its surroundings. Its blood is considered heter. There you go. Ask the Gemara, hey, it's not so simple. Were you in the kitchen while they cooked it? I mean, you have to know the particulars of the story, the background, before you can testify. But Maskeflo Rav Ashi had a question. But some sort of Shmuel Mezrukinya. But Dilma, perhaps. Pikana, the opening of the trachea, of the pipe, was protruding from the pot. Chutz l'kadera hava was outside the pot, through which the blood oozed out of the pot. Of course it's okay. So you have to ask the chef what happened there before you can test it. Vinami, alternatively, perhaps the reason that there was no blood issue is michlat havachalat lemikar. It was congealed. It was sort of frozen in place. The blood inside the liver, due to the fact that it was immersed in either vinegar, which seals it, doesn't allow the blood to come out, or in scalding hot water. Mikara, perhaps they did that before they cooked it. That's why there was no concern. Kiha, as we find in the following story, the Rav Huna, what would he do? Chaltele b'chala. Before they would cook up the liver with other meat, they would dunk it in vinegar, and the acidic effect would sort of freeze the blood inside it. Rav Nachman had a different method. Chaltele b'roishchen. For him, they would dip it in burning hot water. Continues the Gemara on this topic. Savar Apapa Kamel, the Rava Apapa, who was sitting in front of Rava, Kamel the Rava Lamemar, he figured like this. When they dip it into vinegar, although it does halt the exiting of blood from the liver, but there is a slight transfer. There is some blood residue which leaves the liver and gets pulled into the vinegar, and therefore challah, the vinegar itself, is usher, you can't drink it. Armalis, he says it can't be so, because if it were so, then just as the whatever percentage of blood transfers out of the liver into the vinegar, while it's still sitting in the vinegar, that blood residue would return back into the liver. And back to square one, it would be usher. Amalei, he says, Ichala usher, if you're telling me the challah is usher because it absorbs some blood from that, extracts some blood out of that liver, then iu nami usher, and the liver itself would also become usher. So apparently it's not so. Why would it be usher? Just as the liver expels some element of blood, hadabala turns around and reabsorbs it. So you can't have it both ways. Because it happens both ways. It goes this way and that way, right? You can't say the vinegar will have a freezing effect, but still say the vinegar is usher. You can't have it, together. So the fact that they relied on this method to freeze up that liver and allow it to be cooked now with the other meat, apparently there's no transfer at all. And the vinegar is perfectly fine. Rav Bar Shava, that was his name, Rav, the son of Shava. Ikla, so he visited, whose home? Levei Rav Nachman. Okay, they served him a meal. Isolate Kav Dashlik, they served him a cooked liver. And shlika here means heavily cooked, not just, plainly cooked, heavily cooked. But he refused to eat it. He was concerned that, true, initially the blood just leaves and is not allowed back in, as we explained before, due to the fact that it's just oozing out. But if it sits there for a while, it gets overcooked. Towards the end of that cooking process, when the blood is already expelled from that liver, now the liver is open to absorption. The concern is that it went back. So he failed to eat it. He didn't want to eat it. Amrulay, So the people there told her of Nachman, the host, look, your guest is not eating. Barber Rav, this young scholar, the Lagav, who's inside there, the house, he's not partaking the food. Umanai, who is he? Rav Bar Shava. Amalus, he told him, Rav Nachman told him, Gamu, force feed L'Shava, force feed Shava, that was his father's name, force feed him. But actually, it's a machlekes Tanaim whether there's a concern of reabsorption in this case, of a heavy cook. Rabbi Lazar Aimer, Hakavide Seres, Veina Seres. The liver, while it's cooked with others, can affect them due to a blood transfer, but the blood itself will not absorb anything. Because as it expels, it releases, does not absorb it. Even if it's heavily cooked, no problem. Says no, depends. He says, if it's seasoned, Rashi says the seasoning softens the liver. So it avails it to absorption. So now the liver will reabsorb its own blood. And likewise, shaluka, when it's heavily cooked, that also has a softening effect. It also has a concern of reabsorption because, as Rashi says, after it finished the plata, after it finished releasing its blood in the initial phase of cooking, at the second phase, it's now open to absorption. Shluka iseres, v'neseres, it forbids the piece next to it, and also reabsorbs, and it itself becomes asur, as per the story and the opinion of Rav Bar Shava. So the first shita says, never a problem. It just sends it out, doesn't come back in. According to the second shita, either when it's softened due to seasoning, or when it's just lingering in the pot due to overcooking, in that case, we're concerned about reabsorption. Okay, so bottom line is, ideally you roast the liver. If you're cooking it, there's all kinds of issues. So it would seem from the Gemara that the initial cooking process does not affect the liver itself because it's busy releasing and will not absorb. But regarding the piece of meat next to it, that's a problem. Regarding a seasoned kaved or overcooked, that itself, that's a problem as well. Rabba Bar Afhuna, what happened to him? Ikla, he paid a visit, lebei, to the home of Rabba Bar Rav Nachman. Ayisul Kamei, Talas, they served him a huge meal, almost like the Avram Avinu with the Malachim. Talas Savi, 3 sa'ah, huge amount of bread. Tachai, Rashi says it was smeared with shemen and dvash, with oil, honey. A real elaborate, spread. No, so like a good guest, the Gemara Bracha says, no good guests credits his hosts and he thanks and takes it personally. Look what they did for me. Amar Luis, he says, how'd you know I was coming? How'd you know I was showing up? That you prepared this elaborate spread. Amar Luis, they said, actually, today's Shabbos. It was the covered Shabbos. They didn't want to, take the credit that they didn't feel they deserved. Amrulay, they said to me, Adifas Lami, no, you better than Shabbos. Shabbos Einig was the covered Shabbos. Okay. In any case, while this was going on, he discovered something which looked questionable. Adahachi, as this was progressing, Ashkach, what does he notice? Ahu kavda. He sees a piece of liver. Full of blood. So its conduit was the blia, or male, dama, full of blood. Intact. He sees, blood accumulating. And the Amalus, he says, why are you serving me blood? Why are you preparing blood? Amalus, they said, what are you supposed to do? So basically what he's trying to say is, the blood in the actual liver material, that's fine. But this is real blood that just accumulated inside the artery. Amrli said to him, what do you want us to do? How do you expect us to? So what then should we do? Amrli says, tear it in both directions. And the tear should be facing downward and roast it like that. That's how you cleanse it of its blood. That's only pertaining liver which has true, blood in it. Aval tachla, but let's say the spleen, even though it looks reddish, that's not really blood. Shumna ba'almo, it's just fattiness. Don't worry about it. You don't have to clean it out. You don't have to. You could even just cook it. You don't have to roast it. Kiha, as per the Shmuel, What happened by Shmuel Abdi lay tafshila de tachli? They would cook him up a spleen. B'yom David Milson, the day that he had his bloodletting, where you had to, eat well to regenerate and revitalize and refresh yourself. So, yeah, he served him a cooked spleen without a concern of blood. It's mar. Okay, let's say we're going to roast these things. Okay, so now, in the interest of preserving time, he's going to do a barbecue and roast it all together. The liver and the udder, yesterday's udder, right? And he's going to put it together in the same spit. Is that okay? So let's just analyze this further. We have the liver, which oozes out blood. We have the udder, which releases milky material. Can they be roasted together? Itmar, kavda, depends what's on top of what. Kavda iluvei bisra asr. Sorry. So the kaved, situated above, kavda iluvei bisra, the kaved, situated above the steak. Okay, so he's cooking liver and steak. He puts the liver over the steak on the spit. Shari, that's okay, despite the blood oozing out of the liver. Dama, the blood mishrak shark, will just slide away because the heat, dissolves and just liquefies it. Just going to slide away, even though it's going to drip on the steak. It's going to slide away and drop. But kachla iluvei bisra. Let's say he's invites his friends over a barbecue. We're serving udders and steaks. Okay, so he has the kachla roasting over the steak. Kachla iluvei bisra. That's a problem because my time. You know why? Because the milk matter coming out of that udder is a thicker, sticky substance which is going to stay on that steak. Rav Dimi Minarda, he learned exactly the opposite. Masni Ifcha, he went the other way. Kachla iluvei bisra. The udder over the steak is shari, it's perfectly fine. My time, I chalav shchuta d'Rabbanan. The milky material out of that udder is only d'Rabbanan because it was not milk from the animal during its lifetime. So we're not concerned. We hope it's just going to slide away. We're not really concerned about any residue, But kavda iluvei bisra asr, but the liver over the steak is a problem. Why? Because that's dam min ha-Torah d'oraisa, which requires us to be more careful. Darish Merema. Merema taught us the halacha l'maisa conclusion is hilchasa. You should avoid it. Ben kavda, ben kachla, whether the liver, whether the roasting udder, to say bisra shari, beneath the steak, it's perfectly fine. But iluvei bisra, above the steak, which allows it to drip on the basra, iluvei bisra, the evidin, if you did it already, okay, you can eat it. But now the chatchila, it's not meant to be done initially. Now what happened? Rav Ashi, Ikla, he paid a visit to his father-in-law's place. Lebei Rami Bar Abba, who was Chamur, his father-in-law. So they were having this, preparing a meal. Chazi, and he notices his brother-in-law, Lebrei, the son of the father-in-law, Bar Abba, the Koshavit, returned to the Amid Beis. The Koshavit he was placing on the, he was put on the spit, he was roasting kavda iluvei bisra, liver above the steak. Amar, he says, what's going on? Kama yoyer, Rabbanan, look how haughty this young scholar is. He's allowing himself this liberty. It's not mutal chatchila emud amar Rabbanan the eved. It's true that Rabbanan allowed it after the fact, but they're not meant to initiate chatchila mi amar. The Gemara continues. V'yikbei dugi. So if the steak is above, that's okay. But if there's a beidugi, which is a grease collector, situated beneath this grill, which collects the grease, which is then used in the kitchen, so in that case, you shouldn't have the kavod at all roasting together with the basar, because the kavod releases blood, which ends up inside that collector, together with the schmaltz. You're going to eat it together. In that case, even if the steak is above, you shouldn't do it because the blood drips into the collector. You're going to eat it together with the... Ask the Gemara, I mean, that concern is prevalent at any grill. I mean, every piece of meat, presuming it wasn't salted and cleansed of its blood, so it's full of blood, and you roast it, and you're good, even though it's dripping with its grease into the beidugi, which you're going to consume later. Difference is like this. Dama de bisra shachin. The blood coming out of a regular piece of meat, sinks down to the bottom. And you know to keep away from it. You just, skim off the top and you leave the blood on the bottom. Done with the coffee, but the blood coming out of the liver floats on top. That's the way it is. So now it's going to mix straight with the grease that he might eat, so you have to keep it away. Amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. Next topic. Sakin sheshachad bo. The shechita knife used to shecht an animal, which came into contact with the neck area, which really heats up during the shechita process, in which case it's like the knife was cooked in blood. So it's permeated with blood. Asur lachta bo riteach. You can't turn around and use it to cut hot material because that blood will be transferred into this next food. What about soinin? Cutting with it something not hot, an apple. With this knife, Amri lo bo yadacha. Some say you have to rinse that apple, rinse off the surface, for concern that there is some material that transferred from the knife to the surface of the apple. Right? There's some non-kosher residue sitting on the surface of the knife as well, not just inside. So that poses a problem. So you have to rinse the apple. Some say you don't have to rinse it. We're not concerned that there was any transfer of residue. Furthermore, ka'ara. What about the bowl, the salting bowl, in which they salt the meat with its with its blood content? So this ka'ara, this bowl, is permeated with blood. Now, although there was no cooking done, but it was heavily salted inside that bowl, so it's like the bowl was cooked with blood, right? Ka'ara shemalch basar, the bowl in which they salted that meat. Asur lechel b'risech, you can't use it to eat it something hot. You can't pour your hot soup into it because it's going to absorb from the blood that's laden in the walls. And as we explained, the bowl is considered as though it was cooked with blood, even though there was no cooking done, it was salted. Ushmuel tamek, Shmuel follows his respective position. The Omar Shmuel, maliach, something which is heavily salted, hari kureseach, like it's boiling. V'kabash, likewise, something which was pickled, sitting in the seasoning for a while, hari ukemush, like it's being cooked in there. So it has the same effect. Kiyosur Ravin, however, Amar B'yechon, he says, no problem. Maliach einek kureseach, v'kabash einek mavushal. Even heavily salting or pickling is not equated to cooking or roasting or boiling. Amar Abaye. So Abaye sort of disregarded this opinion here. He says, no, had the Ravin less. I disagree with Ravin's presentation. That, Rabbi Yechanan was not concerned about Maliach Kereseach. I'll bring you a story to back it up. Had the Ravin less, I'll show you. Dahi Pincha, there was this bowl, okay, made of clay, of cheres, clay bowl. David be Ravami, in the home of Ravami. The Malach and Ravami was a Talmud of Rabbi Yechon. Okay, listen to this. The Malach be Bistra, he salted his meat in this bowl of a tavern, then he broke it. Why do you have to break it? What's wrong with the bowl? It wasn't cooked with forbidden matter, it was just salted. Look, Rabbi Ami was a Talmud of the Rabbi Yechon Hava. My time at Tavi said, why did he break it? Lav Mishum, apparently because he was following his Rebbe's position on this matter. The Shamiele, Rabbi Yechanan, apparently he heard from his Rabbi Yechanan that the salting process has a similar effect to a cooking process. The Amar Malech Kereseach. So that must be the correct version. Okay, Yosef of Kahana, he was sitting, Achva, he was the brother of Rav Yehuda, Kamei in front of the Rav Huna, Yosef Kahana, he was sitting and saying over as follows. Ka'ara shemalch basar, right? The salting bowl, asur lechel b'risech, you can use it to eat hot, which will extract the blood from the walls of the kli. Utznoin shechat besakin. However, a tznoin, a radish, which was sliced with a fleshik, a knife that was used with fleshik, okay, it was used with hot meat, no question that it's permeated with meat flavor. He turned around and used that same knife to slice a tznoin, a parvet tznoin, a neutral tznoin, just a radish. Mutu l'achle b'kutach. You can take that tznoin, that radish, that slice, and eat it together with kutach, which was like a dip, like a ketchup with milk. It was a milchige product. Despite the fact that the tznoin was handled with a meaty knife. And presumably there was some transfer of flavor from the knife to the tznoin. So how could you go ahead and use that tznoin with milchiks? My time and why? What's the difference between the bowl that absorbed blood, which cannot be used with kosher material due to the blood content in the walls of the kli, versus the tznoin, which seemed to have absorbed a meat flavor from that knife, which can now be used and eaten together with milk? What's the difference? My time, Amar Abaye says, very clear difference. Haya terabala. The radish absorbed flavor from the knife, but at that point it was permitted flavor. Nothing wrong with the meat inside the tznoin, so we don't reckon with it as a problem. Vayisura bala, but the salting bowl absorbed within it prohibited matter, blood. And that's why it can't be used. Amalei Rava says, Rava, what's the difference? Ultimately, he's going to turn around and use that radish with milk. That's forbidden as well. True, currently inside the tznoin it's fine, but when he joins it up with milk, it's going to explode. Amalei Rava, ki bala heter, even if it absorbed permissible meat flavor, mayavi, who cares? Safe. Ultimately, hay heter das leisuru. True, it's currently mutter, but it's going to develop into isser. The isur ka'achal, because when he eats it together with the meat, it's asr. So what's the difference? Elam Rava, let me explain to you the difference. We're talking about different scenarios. The bowl is saturated with blood, and that flavor will turn around and transfer into the new content, the soup, which will be discernible in the soup. But by the tznoin, it's a slight flavor, which is not really discernible, and therefore it's not a concern. So it's a different situation. Elam Rava. There's no halachic difference, it's just a practical difference. Hay efshalim mitameh. He says like this. The radish you can check out, you can sample it and see if it has a flavor. And we're speaking that it doesn't, so it's not a problem. The transfer was so minute that it's not discernible. So it's not classified as fleishiks. But the bowl, which is saturated with blood, you can't taste it. You can't taste it because it's asr, right? Okay, give it to a guy to taste. He'll cook something in there, I'll taste it. Kfela is a chef. Guy is a chef. Haven't we learned elsewhere? That's a proper method. You yourself, Rava taught us, you can rely on a guy. Taisa says we're talking about a professional chef who will, endeavor to uphold his reputation. He's not going to lead you wrong. He's not, right? We have a Mishnah, basar, a pot which was used to cook meat, can be used for cooking milk. If he did, if the meat flavor is discernible inside the milk, that's a problem. Bishul but truma likewise. If you use it to cook truma, which is only good for a kohen, you shouldn't cook with it regular material. If he did, it's a matter of flavor. Ramina, the question was, how in the world are you going to figure this out? Okay, truma, you give it to the kohen and tell him, listen, tell me what's going on. Tell me if you discern any flavor. Because the kohen can eat truma, right? But when it's a question of mixing milk and meat, which is also for anybody, any Yisrael, who's going to take the sample, who's going to make the test? Va'amras lana, yourself, Rava told us, give it to the guy. L'tamik fela. Chinamis here as well by the salting bowl. L'tamik fela. Why can't you do the test with the guy? Chinamik, you come in like a fela. You're right, says Rava. I meant when there's no guy around. So there's no way to confirm one way or the other, so you can't use it. But technically, if there's no nesinas tam, just as the tznoin is okay, so is the bowl. Itmar, now comes another discussion. Suppose this flavor traveled a long way. Went through one station, the train went through one station to another station. It's called Noisin Tam Bar, the son of Noisin Tam. He's a second generation, he's a double derivative. And, hold it, at this point he's still okay. The problem only begins after the second station, and then we have to deal with it with respect to joining up with another material which creates a clash. In halacha it's called not bar not tehetera. So in contrast to the previous scenario, we had tam rishon, we have a problem right away. It's blood, it's usher. As soon as it goes into the wall, or in the case of the tznoin, where meat inherently is not a problem when it's in the tznoin. But once it comes out of the tznoin and joins up with the milk product, then it's a problem. So that's a single Nisan Tam. It didn't go through two phases, two stations. Right? It didn't transfer through two materials till it got to us. Only through one material. That's a single Nisan Tam. So if it's discernible, you have to reckon with it. But here in the next Gemara, we're going to speak about a double Nisan Tam. The flavor traveled through one station, through one material, and through the next. And at that point, it still maintained its permitted status. And now we have to deal with it with respect to mixing it with something else. A milky flavor with a new fleishik product, or vice versa. Now, according to Shmuel, it's perfectly fine because it got so weakened. While still in its permitted status, so at this late stage in the game, we no longer have to reckon with it. It's so sort of disconnected from its source. Let's think about it. The whole idea of Nisan Tam ki ikar, right? Even if the whole Tam ki ikar is minat Torah, but it's a chiddush that merely flavor. It's not the actual material, it's just the flavor of. It identifies with its source, it relates to its, its yichus, and maintains its isser status. But when it's so disconnected, it traveled such a circular route, through that, and all the while it was still okay. So it was never yet stamped as forbidden. So now at this late stage in the game, when it's been so weakened through all its travels and travails, we no longer have to reckon with it with respect to the next transfer, which theoretically could cause a problem. No, we don't have to reckon with it. So let's see, Itzmar. Here comes an example. Dogim. So you have freshly roasted, burning hot fish coming off the grill. Shola b'kara, which were placed on a bowl. A meaty bowl, a fleishik bowl, which was used to cook meat, which is laden with meat flavor inside its walls. Now, so far so good. There's nothing wrong with fish in a, right? Let's just break it down, right? Let's analyze what's going on. We have the tam of the basar, which had entered the walls of the kara. So far so good. So it's a tam rishon, it's the first station. Still maintained its permitted status, nothing wrong with meat, right? Now it transferred over, next station. The train traveled on to the next station, into the fish. That's not barnat, right? Nisan Tam, the son of a Nisan Tam, meaning a double derivative, a next generational flavor. But at this point, again, it's still okay, nothing wrong with. The question is, can I eat this fish with a fish that has this sort of second generation flavor, which is still permitted? Can I eat it with meat? That's the shayla. Rav Amar also lachal mekutach. You can't have it with milk. Ushmol Amar, yes, mutu lachal mekutach. Rav Amar aser. Reason why it's forbidden, Nisan Tamhu. That is, there's flavor here. Ushmol Amar mutar. It's fine. Nisan Tam bar Nisan Tamhu. He's the second generational flavor, and it's okay. V'hadu Rav lavaferish itma. The truth is that Rav's strict position was not taught openly. Ela Mechlal Itma was derived from a story, which seemed to imply this position. The Rav Iklal Be'Rav, he came to the house of Rav Simi Barchia, Barbara, his grandson. Chosh Be'einav, Rav felt unwell in his eye. Avdulei Shaifa, but so they prepared him a medicine inside a bowl. So they cooked it up, whatever it is. Basar after he's done that, they used the same bowl, the same pot, to cook him up his food. And he upon tasting this food, he tasted the flavor of the medicine. Time with the shaif, he tasted the flavor of the medicine. He says, ooh, that's an interesting observation. Amar, he says, Yoiv time kuli haisali. Previous material cooked in the same pot is so powerful that it can get transferred to the next food. And the Gemara understood from that flavor can travel this far. Likewise, the fish would be affected by the meat which was cooked beforehand. Says the Gemara, you can't compare two stories. The medicine wouldn't necessarily indicate its position regarding the fish. You know why? There it's very different. The medicines are sharp and potent, so that's why. It maintained its, the flavor endured and carried over. But who's to say that you apply it by regular food materials? Here comes another story of Elazar, who was a Talmud of both Rav and Shmuel. He was standing and serving in front of Mar Shmuel, who's Shmuel, right? Mar Shmuel is Shmuel. Okay, they served Shmuel this very dish, the fish prepared in the kara, the meaty, fleshig pot, and he was eating it with milchig ketchup. No, so he wanted to serve his guest as well. Rav Elazar, he served him. He offered him, he didn't want to eat. So Shmuel responded. He says, look, I served it to your own teacher, to Rav. You had no problem eating it. You're being more strict than your Rebbe. You're not going to eat it. So Rav Elazar was kind of caught by surprise because he was under the impression that his Rebbe Rav forbade this type of mix. Also, he came back to Rav. He says, change your mind? Mar reverted from his position. I heard interesting information. He says, Chas li Lezari. He says, Chas v'shah, of course not. Lezari, Hashem should protect the child, the son of the Abba bar Abba. That was Shmuel's father. Shmuel was Shmuel bar Abba, who was bar Abba. His father was Abba bar Abba. So that's how he related to Shmuel. He says, Hashem should protect Shmuel. Delisvi le'midi, who would never, ever feed me something delisvirli, which I don't agree with. Of course he didn't. No way. He never would have fed it to me. Never. So it never happened. Rashi says, it never happened. Now the obvious question is, why would, if it never happened, how did Shmuel sort of pretend that it happened? It's an interesting shot from the Marash Dam. He says a very interesting thing. He says Shmuel wasn't sure why Rav Elazar was hesitating. Why didn't he want to partake in that dish? Was it because his own position dictated as such that he shouldn't have he held that even this weakened flavor is a problem? Or it wasn't his own personal position, it was just out of respect to Rav, who was his Rebbe, who held that position. If that was the case, Shmuel held that now that he's standing in front of him, in front of Shmuel, who is also his Rebbe, he's not bound to Rav, to uphold Rav's covered. If anything, he should be conforming to Shmuel, who's right here, to his practice, out of respect to Shmuel. So he's trying to sort of test him out and see what his motive was. Where was he coming from? So he says to him, look, I fed your Rebbe. Your Rebbe allows it. So now, if it was Rav Elazar's own personal position not to eat it, so he would still not eat it, irrespective of Rav's concession. But if in fact he himself was not of the opinion that it's us, Rav Elazar, it was just sort of he was following his Rebbe's practice, so now that he heard allegedly that Rav changed his mind, he would partake in the food in honor of Shmuel, because this was Shmuel's. And the fact that he didn't eat it, despite having been told that Rav, was the indication that in fact it was Rav Elazar's own personal position to refrain. Interesting pshat. Okay, here comes another story. Rav Huna and Rav Chia bar Ashi, they were both having lunch. Havayasvi, they were sitting chad, one of them behind Gisa the Mabed the Surah, on one side of the river, the creek of Surah, and the other one on the other side. And it was close enough that they were able to, observe each other. V'chad behind Gisa the Mabed. Lamar Aisule Dogam Shal B'Kara V'Achal B'Kutach. One of these chacham was served this very dish, the fish placed on this kara, and he had it with the milk dip, no problem. On the other side of the river, what was going on? The Mar, isolate, they served him to Einim Anam Techasuda. He was in the middle of a bread meal and he's being served fruit, figs, grapes. And he ate it without making a bracha. Now, typically we say only something which relates to a meal, which is considered part of a typical meal, is covered by the hamaitzi on the bread. But otherwise, something which doesn't relate to the meal, you would assume fruit has that status. You don't cover it by the bread. You make its own bracha. So each chacham had a comment about the other one's behavior. He says like this: Mar amar lechavri. So one turned to the other, who had the fish. He says yasma, like a yasam, like an orphan. Rashi says it's an expression to say beloy das. You're not being mindful. Avad rabbachachi. Your Rebbe did this? How do you do that? Did your Rebbe do that? And likewise, the other one said the same. Mar amar lechavri. The other one turned to him. Yasma avad rabbachachi. Why are you doing that? And each one then proceeded to explain his conduct. Mar amar lechavri. The one who had the fish with the ketchup says to his friend, he says, Anoka Shmuel, I go with Shmuel, who says it's a second generational flavor, there's no issue, we don't reckon with it. And the other one likewise responded to justify what he did. The Mar amar lechavri says, the fruit? Yeah, Anoka Reb Chia Sfri, I go like Reb Chia. Reb Chia Sfri, the Tani Reb Chia tells us, Pas Peteres Kol Minei Machal. The bread and the bracha they make on the bread exempts every type of food, even fruit and vegetable, everything. Likewise, if you're making hagafen on wine, there's other, liquids on other drinks on the table. Wine is the head, right? The most prominent of all, and covers everything. Hence, no bracha even for fruits. Okay, what's the conclusion of this whole back and forth? Amar Chizkiah Mishum quotes Abai Hilchasa. What's the halacha? Dogim she'olu b'ka'ara, right? The burning hot fish placed on this fleishig bowl. Mutar la'oichlam b'kutach can be consumed together with milk because the flavor is so minute and so weakened. We don't reckon with it. Okay, further on this topic, tznoy shechatacha b'sakin, shechatacha b'basar, but a piece of radish which was sliced using a knife that had been used with meat. Also la'oichlam b'kutach. In this case, you cannot have that radish with milk. Why? That's only by radish. We turn to the next page. The agav churfe, due to its sharpness, its acidity, because it's sharp, it absorbs. It's just the way it is. It's because of its dryness and sharpness. It sucks and absorbs the flavor out of that knife. Rashi explains. Furthermore, we that on the knife itself, on the surface, there's some grease from some residue left behind from the meat. So in this case, it's not considered a weakened, second generational tam. It's like the tam is there, it's intact. It's primary, it's not just a derivative. Right? So qualitatively, it's heightened flavor. It's primary flavor. In which case, you can't say, well, it's train went through a couple of stations already. It's already dissipated. No. It's intact, it's there, it's discernible, and it's classified as fleishiks. But then again, that's only regarding this radish, which has that sharpness. Aval kishas, but just cutting a cucumber, whatever. Don't worry, garli bipaski, just scrape off the surface where it was cut to make sure there's nothing, no residue there. But achlan can eat it with fleishiks, with milchiks. Likewise, kilcha de lifta shari, if you use this knife to cut pieces of lefes, of turnip, that's also fine. It doesn't have the same effect as the radish. The silka asiri, but beets, that will suck the flavor in, that's a problem. But if together with the beets, he first cut the lefes with the knife, so that cleansed the knife of any issues, and now and now even if you proceeded to cut the other material, it's not a problem. Rashi says the lefes that was cut, the lefes that was cut first, that came into contact with the knife first, mevatel the tam of the shamnunis. Now, second, it sort of nullifies the tam of the shamnunis, and even if you went and cut the other thing afterwards, the tam is no longer intact, and it's okay. Shabrata. Okay, so summation. Many topics we discussed today. We discussed first the liver. Ideally, you roast it, cut it, roast it, have the blood trickle out, but if it's cooked, so if you're just cooking the liver itself, due to the fact that it's expelling, it's busy sending it out, it's not going to reabsorb its own blood, unless it's seasoned, unless it's heavily cooked, which according to some sheets is a problem. Likewise, a piece of meat next to it can be a problem as well. We spoke about roasting various types of meats, with each other, taking care not to have any carryover. And we discussed the knife, how it's used for shechita, whether it can be used to cut other things. We discussed the salting bowl, which is laden with blood residue due to the fact that it was salted, which is salted is like somewhat a cooking experience, which permeates the walls with forbidden matter. We discussed tam rishon, first generational flavor, tam sheni, not barnat, second generational, which is mutter, according to talmud-gemara, unless we're dealing with unique materials due to their charifas, their sharpness, which refresh the material, and in which case it has to be reckoned with. All the best to you, and atzlacha.